All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're tackling fixed film treatment. You ready to dive in?
Yeah, I'm ready. I've been going over it, but honestly, there are still a few parts that trip me up.
Good. That's what we're here for. Fixed film stuff shows up all over the certification exams, so let's make sure you feel solid on it.
Okay, so first things first. You gotta know where this process even happens in the plant. Looking at this flow diagram here, you see your usual suspects: preliminary, primary, secondary treatment. Fixed film is a type of secondary treatment, just like activated sludge. Its whole job is to chew up all that dissolved stuff, the BOD, that the primary tanks couldn't grab.
So it's just another way to use bugs to clean the water, right? Totally. But here's the key difference. With activated sludge, the microorganisms are all free swimming in the tank. In fixed film, we give them a house to live in. We provide a surface, we call it media, for a whole layer of microorganisms to grow on. Then we just pass the wastewater over them. We're basically building a microscopic city for them to do all the heavy lifting.
And that little microscopic city, the whole ecosystem, well, the heart of it all is what we call the biofilm. You absolutely have to get this for the exam. It's everything.
Biofilm. So is that just the slime that grows on the media? Yes, that is the perfect way to think about it. But it's not just random slime. It's a super complex living community. A city of bacteria, protozoa, and all sorts of other critters, all stuck together and clinging to that media. They create this sticky goo that helps them hang on. This biofilm, this is your workforce right here.
And this little city, it has a whole life cycle. First, you have some free-floating bacteria that find a nice clean spot on the media and attach. Then, as they eat the food, all that BOD in the wastewater, they start to grow and multiply. The whole biofilm layer matures, getting thicker and thicker. And that brings us to the final, really important stage, sloughing. Okay, what is sloughing really? And why does it matter? Excellent question. So, imagine that biofilm gets super thick, right? Like a really dense forest. The food and the oxygen can't make it all the way down to the bottom layers that are stuck to the media. So what happens? Those organisms at the bottom start to die off, and the whole layer loses its grip. Then, whoosh, the force of the water flowing past just tears off these big chunks of old, thick biofilm. And believe it or not, that's a good thing. It's the system's natural way of spring cleaning, making room for fresh, hungry new growth. All that sloughed off stuff just heads downstream to the secondary clarifier to get settled out.
All right, so we've got the biology down. Now let's talk about the actual machines, the hardware that you're going to see on the exam.
Right, so trickling filters and RBCs, rotating biological contactors, they both use biofilm, but man, they look completely different. They really do, and this table lays out the differences perfectly. A trickling filter is pretty simple. It's a big bed of media, which used to be rock, but is mostly plastic now, and you just spray wastewater over the top. Air flows up from the bottom. An RBC, though, that's a different beast. You've got these huge plastic discs packed together on a shaft that rotates really slowly. About half of it is dipped in the wastewater, and the other half is exposed to the air. So it gets food and water, then it gets air. Food and water, then air. Same goal, totally different ways of getting there. Okay, deep breath. Let's talk math. Because I promise you, I guarantee you, you're going to see loading rate questions on your exam. But don't let them scare you. It's all just about keeping the system in balance. First up, organic loading rate, or OLR. The key word to remember here is organic. Just think food. That's all this is. It's how many pounds of food, or BOD, we're feeding our little bug city every day, spread across the entire volume of our media. We're just managing the pantry.
Okay, food, I got it. But that's where I always get mixed up with hydraulic loading rate. They just sound so similar. It's a super common mix-up. Just remember this. If OLR is the food, then HLR is the water. It's all about the flow. How many gallons of wastewater are we pushing across the surface area of our media every single day? It's all about food versus water. Keep that straight, and you'll be golden.
Okay, let's put it to the test then. So you're out at the plant, and your OLR, your food load, is through the roof. What do you think is going to happen to that biofilm?
Well, if there's more food, the biofilm is going to grow like crazy and get really, really thick, right? You got it. And that starts a domino effect. The biofilm gets excessively thick. It starts to physically clog up the media. But here's the real problem, the one they love to ask about on the exam. That biofilm gets so dense that oxygen can only penetrate the very top surface. Everything underneath, it goes anoxic or even anaerobic. And that's when you start getting those nasty septic odors and your treatment performance just tanks. all because you gave it too much food.
And believe me, the people who write the certification exams love that little chain reaction. So let's look at how they might actually ask you about it.
Okay, here's a typical one. A fixed film process receives a heavy organic load. Which of the following statements is true? Take a second and think it through, based on what we just talked about.
All right, let's break this down. Heavy organic load means tons of food, which means a super thick biofilm. So right off the bat, A is wrong. There's no way oxygen is getting all the way through that. And B, the biofilm will become thinner? Nope, it's going to get thicker. So B is out too. Perfect, you're on a roll. So what's left?
Well, if oxygen can't get to those deeper layers, they're going to go anoxic or anaerobic. So C looks really good. And D, the sloughing rate will decrease? No way. If those inner layers are dying off, the sloughing rate will probably increase. So yeah, it's got to be C.
Nailed it!
That is exactly the thought process you need. See, it's not about memorizing a bunch of random facts. It's about understanding the process and thinking it through logically.
Okay, enough with the test questions. Let's take this into the real world. Let's do some troubleshooting.
Ah, ponding. I've definitely heard of that. So that's literally when you get puddles forming on top of the trickling filter and the water isn't flowing down through it? That's exactly it. You're doing your morning rounds, you look over at your trickling filter, and it's not trickling, it's basically a swamp on top. What's the first thing that pops into your head?
Well, based on everything we've been saying, my first thought is that the biofilm has just gotten way too thick and it's physically clogging up all the spaces in the media. Spot on. And that's a big deal because if the water can't get through the media, it's not getting treated. So what do you do about it? Well, your first move is usually to crank up the recirculation flow. Try to blast it with more water at a higher speed to shear off some of that excess gunk. Basically force a big sloughing event. If that doesn't do the trick and it's really bad, yeah, you might have to take the whole thing offline and give the media a good washing.
Whoa, okay, that was a ton of information. Let's boil it all down into a quick cheat sheet for the exam. Ready?
Here are the absolute must-knows. 1. The biofilm is the engine. It does all the work. 2. Sloughing isn't a problem. It's a good thing. It's self-cleaning. 3. Know the basic difference between a trickling filter and an RBC. And the big one, 4. Organic load is food. Hydraulic load is water. And finally, too much food leads to a thick biofilm, which means no oxygen can get inside.
You know, just thinking of it as a balance between food and air, that actually simplifies it a lot. That's the golden ticket. I'm telling you, almost every operational problem or exam question they can throw at you about this stuff comes down to that fundamental balance. So when you see a fixed film question, the very first thought in your head should be, okay, what's happening with the food and the air here?
So, to really make this stick, think about your own plant or other plants you've heard about. What are the real, day-to-day problems you see with these systems? Connecting this stuff to the real world is what's going to lock it in your brain for exam day. You did great today. Keep thinking about that balance, and you're going to crush these questions.